opinions expressed in the following are those of its participants and do not necessarily reflect those of the producers and the Six Talk Podcast Network. Also, the following contains mature material and mild language, which may not be suitable for all audiences. Discretion is advised.
And the podcast commences for this Friday night, July 10th, 2020. This is digest number 5 of the Anime Roundtable Canada, version 2.0. Mike Nicolas again in the captain's chair at 6 points. James Austin, Kevin Ng, and Mohamed Sharmarke remotely from their homes in the West End. If you want to get in touch with us, animeroundtable@gmail.com on email, at Anime Roundtable on Twitter and Instagram, animeroundtable.com for our past episodes. Of course, there's the Discord, and a reminder to please give us a good review if you're getting this on a podcatcher like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and the like. So in the aftermath of finally putting up episode 20, we are gathered here today, mainly at Kevin's request, to recap the weekend that was Anime Online Convention Overload and look ahead to the other anime online cons to come. But, confession from me. Most of my weekend was spent either playing video games, i.e. Yakuza 0, or watching them being played, i.e. Overwatch League. So basically, I'm going to turn to the other 3 this evening and ask them about what stuck out about Funimation Con, Anime Expo Lite, and Aniplex Online. And if there's anything from any possible VODs worth checking out within the next few days, because my understanding is they'll probably be taken down in the next few days. Kevin, this was your thing. And I hate to put you on the spot over this.
Mm-hmm.
But what did stick out? It sounded like you saw a fair amount of it.
I caught not most, but I caught a good chunk of Saturday. I'd say I feel like Friday was the day that I really missed because that was where the bulk of the announcements were made in terms of licensing. But Saturday for me, I think the one that I really paid most attention to was the Kodansha panel, where apparently none of those licenses were really new in the sense that apparently they did announce them up to like a few days beforehand. At least a couple of people in the chat were complaining about that, but it was new to me, so it was fine.
It's always worth something with these conventions. It puts out something that might have been known into a larger form. So people, there's a good possibility, unless you were really digging for this information, you wouldn't have known. You're just stumbling on it. And this is a good form to...
Yeah, it's good to recap and then do it different. Like I know Ed Chavez had a different announcement for each of the cons he was at. There was another mini one he was involved with.
Okay. All right, Kevin. Sorry about that.
Oh, so yeah, I used to be one of those people who would like be on top of this shit all the time, especially for manga, but now it's just like, oh yeah, that's cool. When it comes out, maybe I'll give it a shot, that kind of thing. Let's see. I'm trying to think here. So the one that caught my eye, or the 2 titles that caught my eye for Kodansha was that A Sign of Affection, which looks pretty shoujo to me based on the art, and the creator is, I know her work from, I believe she did Shortcake Cake, which is one of my more recent favorite shoujo manga of late. Let me make sure that I'm correct on that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's her. So this one's about a girl who's, I think she's deaf. I think that's it.
Okay.
Yeah. Ah, okay. So pretty much this couple has to communicate through sign language. Or at least they have to try.
That sounds like quite a premise already. And we see a version of it with C on Apple TV.
And And on the vertical side, they confirmed Blood on the Tracks will be published physically, because that was being published digitally.
That's interesting. But the interesting thing about that is all of them are just going to be under the Kodansha comics since they've amalgamated everything under one.
So from the looks of it, from what I can tell at least, they are still keeping the vertical imprint, because I guess that is like the more offbeat stuff.
I was thinking that's the weird part because I started a series in February, Sweat and Soap, and it was from Morning, Kodansha Morning, and I would have thought it would have been a vertical series, but it's under the Kodansha USA, which is kind of interesting. So I guess it'll be interesting to see how they do that going forward, how you pick and choose.
And just to clarify, it was already coming out physically, but they're going to put it out digitally starting next year. Huh. That's interesting. And that one's by Shuzo Oshimi, so that's the creator of Happiness and The Flowers of Evil and Inside Mari.
Yeah, they've been getting like Vertical and Kodansha, all of those ones, except we heard that the art book and then Inside Mari is going to be done by Dempa, so they're spreading it around. But it's interesting because a lot of people I know, if they'd actually been at con, they've been getting a lot of feedback because of all the manga publishers. They're the only ones in COVID. They've delayed the physical releases, but they're also delaying those digital releases to the same date as the physical. And all the other guys aren't doing that.
I see.
Because some people are like, okay, you set the date, you should release, and everyone else has been doing that, but Kodansha USA, which is interesting. And the other ones are promoting it as it's kind of a first look or a first blush or whatever and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Just to me, making the step away from digital to a physical copy sounds like it's a significant thing for that to happen.
And a lot of the Kodansha ones I know are always, they have a lot of digital releases that are digital only. So it was nice to get some news on the physical front.
And then, yeah, maybe they'll put it physically later, but then there have been more and more series that have started digitally first, and I feel like more and more shoujo manga are going in that direction. Maybe I'm perceiving that incorrectly, but I don't know.
The involving consumption of works.
Sometimes they make deals, like I think Kodansha made a deal for 2 of their manga digitally only with Comic Walker, and one of them was like, "Why the hell are you here, teacher?" and stuff like that. And supposedly that was selling like hotcakes for Sentai on the anime side, and that's more of seinen ecchi.
Oh, and just to clarify on A Sign of Affection, it was already coming out digitally, but then they decided to put it out physically.
Okay.
So maybe the test bed worked, because I think some of that is what they do, right? Because they think it might not be good enough to go physically to make those sales.
I'm really curious about how these titles do digitally nowadays, because we don't really have any way of... There's no numbers to look at. Granted that numbers are often not shared with the public, but it still makes you wonder nonetheless.
And the book scan only gives you so much because they only look at certain parts of the industry, and even the diamond numbers only look at certain things too.
Yeah.
No, it always has my attention because, as I said, we're moving a little bit away from physical media.
Slowly, yeah.
Yeah, and then the ebook. Well, the ebook thing is always a fascination to me, regardless. So I don't know how it's really going on the manga side, but in light of the whole, my introduction with the Humble Bundle about a month ago.
And we look at J Novel as doing those digital first blush of the digital light novels, and then they've started to go into a bit more physical for some of the ones that probably are going to be more successful. So
yeah, it's one of those. The digital is like on paper. Oh, bad metaphor. First thought is you can push that a little bit wider and then you use that to gauge interest in a possible holding a physical edition that you can really hold. But the digital is the mass version these days, I think. It's still dizzy for me, especially since there's still always plenty of issues when it comes to digital books, and whether they're manga or novels. I mean,
or
that's been
even
well
digital
publicized.
games and stuff like that. And we've heard a few things about that this week. Like I think Capcom was giving numbers, and the numbers were staggering how much it was for digital now versus physical. Like it's basically digital is winning. More people are buying digital games than they are physical games from them.
That I do find that fascinating because I guess it's ease of access. That's the only reason why I can see that being the case, because I used to think that digital games, well, actually, no, in several cases, digital is a little cheaper. Not always, but man, like I bought Age of Empires 2 Definitive Edition this week because
Yes, that I've seen advertisements for that.
that's part of the Steam sale, and so I actually have those on disc from like 1999. But
I was about to say 20 years ago. Yeah, I mean that's how the advertising works.
I was going to say, here's that number I was looking for. So from their annual shareholders meeting for Capcom, it was larger than I thought. At the moment, they said 80% of their games are sold digitally. And they said that's an encouraging trend, and they're hoping to go to 90%. And I'm just thinking, holy smokes. Because remember, they've always been big into AAA games, if you want to say it, or bigger games that would be sold physically. So that's crazy.
Kevin, what's your thought again?
I was saying, I've mentioned this time and again. So I bought that release because playing my 1999 version of Age of Empires 2 is impractical now, and the game is only on PC. So it's the only way I can play that game. Period.
Yeah. Well, I'd not made a secret of my Yakuza quests. I finished up digitally downloading the 0 to 6 and Judgment within the last couple days.
How big was the download, Mike?
How big? Oh, I haven't officially. I just purchased them, but they stay in the library just in case I decide to try to return them. It's Sony's policy. If once you start downloading it, you can't refund it.
Interesting. I didn't exactly know that. That's interesting. There is some sort of weird policy.
A little inflexible because Steam gives you 14 days, or if you played it for less than 2 hours.
I was told that, but Sony's is the second you hit the download button, you're locked. And there was, well, I'll quickly tell this story. It was Yakuza 0, the mutual friend, going back to the story of how I got it. I was able to get that for $10. I bought that before the sale ended and started downloading it in. And then a few days later, I found out that the Origins bundle was on sale for $40. So, but because I had already downloaded 0, I couldn't return it. So I was out at basically $10. I purchased the Origins bundle. It might be the biggest issue with Sony's return policy for starters, but maybe it's a bigger discussion altogether about digital downloads in case you want to return something, like the refund policy when it comes to digital downloads, generally speaking. So the upshot of the whole thing is I'm out $10 because the Origins bundle had 0 and then Kwami 1 and 2, basically the remakes of the original 2 games.
Yeah, see, and this is why I don't. And like I said before, this is why I don't like buying digital.
Yeah, I like the things.
Yeah, I understand. I don't know how to feel about it because I was I spent a lot of time being skeptical of digital purchases, of buying things digitally because of the whole. Well, obviously, we were talking return policies here for starters, but the other thing is, of course, it's basic DRM as well. What if the medium you bought your download on, it's not yours forever, and so if your medium by which you got this for goes under, you're kind of out of luck. But it's also, cynically speaking, it's also, the companies have no issue with that because they want you to buy the same thing more than once.
They've been bringing to many platforms, right?
Right.
That's hard for game preservation in the future, of course, and that's still a thing. Even
keeping a certain income stream going. I mean, here, like I said, hardcore fans will buy the same thing a few times over if the next version is just a little better or has a bigger appeal to it. Star Wars fans, I'm sure, bought the movies.
It's like playing GTA 5 on 4 different consoles.
Oh, yes. Like that, GTA 5 in terms of video games, 4 different consoles, really?
Yeah, 5, 4, 3, not 2, so 3 different consoles.
Yeah.
PS3
and then
PS5.
And Xbox 360 and Xbox One and
oh god, yeah.
I'm assuming it's on Series X.
And it's a launch title and a redone version, I guess, on could be like they could be the launch titles on PS5 and Series X or something.
Oh, it's confirmed.
Yes. And I mean, it's like buying Star Wars and going from VHS to remastered VHS and then DVD and then Blu-ray.
But with still no theatrical cut.
Yeah, stuff like that.
I think Microsoft, Sony hasn't said anything, but Microsoft said if you bought an Xbox One version copy and it's in their program, you're upgraded for free to the X version and stuff like that, which is interesting. I forget what they call it, but it was basically you get a free upgrade.
And to be fair, I think Sony with their PS5, they do have backward compatibility with PS4. So
we'll see.
They haven't said how much, but we'll see because.
Well, you hopefully be able to, if you made a purchase on a 4, you can play it on a 5. That's what I'm hoping for. We'll find out in due time.
Guess we'll find out for all those indie games that people bought from Limited Run and all those other limited places as well, because those are some of the ones that buy it multiple times too.
Let's get back on track on the anime, to the anime online conventions. What else has stuck out to you guys? Kevin?
So on the Viz side, they announced Asadora by Naoki Urasawa. That's coming out early next year. So I'm assuming that's his new work.
Yes, his new work. And in October, Kevin, his short stories are coming out. I think it's called Sneeze.
I see. No Yawara. Okay.
No, unfortunately, no.
Yeah, I call that, or as I like to call it, the last thing on my bucket list. Anything Yawara is my personal last item on the bucket list. If anything comes out there and I can be able to get that, whether it's manga or more of the anime, Animigo, I can die happy.
Well, hey, never say never. Urusei Yatsura finally came out after all this time, and we always thought that was hopeless.
Like the whole series, right? Yeah. Who has that? Recount for me.
Viz relicensed the manga after like 25, 30 years.
They'll never say never. Okay, continue. Sorry, let's continue with Viz.
They also brought out Beast Complex, which is the precursor to Beastars. So that was, I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, that was a bunch of short stories, also featuring anthropomorphic animals. So I guess if they put out Beast Complex, that must mean that Beastars is at least doing all right for them.
Well, I wonder about the Netflix numbers, right? Because that would probably affect them too, right? So I think they probably got a good amount from that too.
Yeah, I would imagine so.
Cross-promo appeal.
And then you have the new Junji Ito story collection, or at least another Junji Ito story collection.
which we had talked about before. So that's great that they can still do one a year and stuff like that in that pristine hardcover edition.
Yeah.
I just
I
don't know. Like, it's crazy how that's grown because it just took forever pulling teeth just to try and sell it for Viz at the start. Dark Horse tried it, One Comics tried it, and now they
yeah.
found a niche and they're exploiting it.
Yeah.
Way to
We'll see. Like, I don't know. I read, like I said it before, Tomia was okay. So, and I still need to read Uzumaki, but I'll stick with it for a little longer and see how it goes. Let's see what else. The new Ray Toma work, The King's Beast, is also coming out next year. So, any shoujo readers may recognize her as the creator of Dawn of the Arcana, which was a pretty good shoujo series in my book.
Hmm.
Let's see what else. They're releasing this little comic book that is about how to be more fashionable. It's called Tokyo Fashion, a comic book. So that caught my attention as well. It's an illustrated guide to Japanese style, so they say.
When I re-listen to this, I'm going to start typing down all these titles that are being rifed off just to see if there's
Actually, and so just to let you know, it is called Sneeze, but Viz is calling it Sneeze Naoki Urasawa Story Collection. That's in October.
the whole title.
They're
Yep.
relying on the
It's like
Urasawa
Higurashi.
name.
Well, yeah, it's like that's true. Urasawa is that type of name historically.
It's kind of funny
Just,
because they haven't brought out Billy Bat, and you would have thought Kodansha would try to go for that because that is who has Billy Bat. It's Kodansha. That's why I think
there's a
Viz
reason.
hasn't gone for it.
See, it's been theorized that Billy Bat is. I don't know where I heard this from, but people will say that Billy Bat is really not that good.
Hmm.
And so, because you'd think it would have been out by now. So there's something going on. Or maybe Urasawa doesn't want it to come out.
Now that's possible too.
Who knows? And the Doctor Stone reboot, which, well, not really a reboot. It's pretty much a prequel tale of the main character's dad. This actually was published online in the Shonen Jump app, but they're just putting it out physically now.
Okay.
Yeah, Doctor Stone's one of the better Shonen Jump titles as of late, just because the main character fights with his mind, and we're not talking psychic powers. His,
Yeah.
his his colleagues, like his friends and his teammates, have various, they have strength of various levels, but no, this guy's just a smart kid, and you don't really see that too often.
True. Okay. So Viz. That's Viz.
That's more or less Viz. And then there was a couple other titles I don't recognize, and then there was some other stuff that they announced for the app, the Shonen Jump app, like
Hmm.
like the Jujutsu Kaisen spin-off and another My Hero Academia like spin-off manga, but I'm just like, yeah, I don't
See,
like Jujutsu
this is
Kaisen.
where I still have to learn to navigate. Where, like, going on back to the whole digital thing, I have to still navigate. I admit where to see what.
See, Viz makes it
Well,
a little tricky because uh, Shonen Jump is Shonen Jump, but there are the odd exceptions, like Slam Dunk and Yu Yu Hakusho and Hunter x Hunter, and that's because their creators don't want their stuff digitally, like for mass consumption. What else? Like, stuff that got canceled are not there anymore. And then all the 18 plus stuff is not on the app, but you have to read it on their website. So Platinum End, Platinum End, which is the new series by the creators of Death Note, is you can only read online. And then Ayakashi Triangle, which is by Kentaro Yabuki, who did Black Cat and To Loveru, is only online, for example.
I'll personally need a lesson on navigating all this now, but we'll save that for another time, right?
Yeah, like I'm sure we can we can tell you as it goes along.
Oh yes, of course. Whenever I'm able to keep up, I suppose. All right.
Mhm.
So that's more or less Viz. Where any other spots you want to go to within the three cons that
Let's see.
really, really grabbed you? Like,
Well, Seven Seas licensed Die Dark, which is a manga by Q Hayashida, uh, who drew Dorohedoro, which recently got an anime adaptation,
hmm.
and pretty sure that's still a Shogakukan manga. So being Seven Seas nabbed that was a little surprising to say the least.
I think Shogakukan and Kodansha have definitely been reaching out because, as they said, even Square Enix said they can't release everything. So it seems like Seven Seas and other publishers have been able to get all these different manga from different people that haven't used to give out, like Shogakukan and stuff like that. Especially, especially ever since Gantz came out, we started to see more come out from different publishers, which is nice.
Would you call that a lifeline to these publishers?
I can only assume, well, in the case of Die Dark, I can only assume that Seven Seas actually did bid a lot of money for it. Because as James alluded to, in the last few years, it seems like the publishers have loosened it up a little bit, especially for Shogakukan and Shueisha.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yep.
because so one example I can think of is that um, ever since Strawberry 100% got canceled, Viz has always been reluctant to release the really perverted Shonen Jump manga. So,
Mm-hmm.
like Nisei Koi and We Never Learn are fairly light in comparison. Like, yeah, you still get the odd like panty shot or like whatever crazy moment, but like To Loveru was like you would have thought To Lover would have came out at some point from them because hey, fan service sells, but then I guess the
And that was
editorial
interesting because
department,
they created Ghost Ship because of titles like that. Just
yeah,
kind of
so
interesting.
Seven Seas finally nabbed that and Yuna and the Haunted Hot Springs, which was another very pervy Shonen Jump manga. And I guess it just wasn't on brand for Shonen Jump to release those really pervy stuff. But then again, Ayakashi Triangle is coming out now through Viz, so it's just interesting to see like how it kind of changes over time.
Yeah. Well, it's the maturing market in some ways too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean that's sort of the appeal to publishers like, well, you name a few, I guess. Name a few. Like Discotech kind of likes to use the nostalgia thing. Fans from 20 years ago are 20 years older, so their tastes have changed.
Mm-hmm.
You might be able to get away with a little more now, just to appeal to those fans.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, just the whole evolving demographic.
Yeah, and I think with Seven Seas, I think they're hoping that Die Dark will be a great seller for them because I think we've talked about it before how they're a pretty scrappy publisher where they've found their niches.
That's the impression, even after all this time.
They've
But of
definitely
course,
done.
but of course, obviously, when you have an opportunity to license a title that will just become big, why not? In this case,
So the other popular one I think Seven Seas was looking at was Berserk of Gluttony. Seems to be another one that they licensed as well.
Okay.
So that will be an interesting one. But a lot of the other ones were on brand. They've done some different Yuri titles, and they've also been getting titles where they were either published either on Twitter or I forget what its name picks the platform in Japan.
Pixiv,
Pixel, yeah. Where it's
yeah,
like they're starting
Pixiv,
off
yeah,
like as Indian stuff like that, and then they find a publisher later on, and it's kind of like autobiography like manga and stuff like that from different
Yeah.
creators.
Okay. All right. So, well, where else do we go in all of this now?
Well, this happened before the con, but Discotech relicensed Space Adventure Cobra.
Yes, I remember hearing about that.
Here we
Okay.
get
Means
two
I
dubbed
gotta sell my copy
episodes.
now. Yeah, with 2 dubbed episodes from their trial of redubbing
That's
it.
from their failed experiment. But as Justin said, they tried, and what more can you do?
Well, there's a
Yeah.
fascination. Sometimes it's good to well, you have the space. Sometimes it's good to include what was kept on the cutting room floor, so to speak. Well, that's part of the discussion, right? Part of the whole. Well, as I said, I would find fascination in that type of stuff. So you understood how the process, parts of how the process went. So here's what was deleted, or here's why we, and maybe if you watch it, you can see why we didn't go with it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I find that kind of fascinating. I mean, and nobody has to feel obliged. Like it's there for at no extra cost.
Mm-hmm.
Well, how much time we got left? Well, as long as we want, I suppose. But let's keep moving along here. Any more licenses, or do you want to talk about any other events that caught your attention?
Let's see.
Defa had some announcements, but the one that stuck out for me from them was the Undercover Ninja, I believe it is called. And that's from the creator of I Am a Hero and stuff like that. His newest
Yeah,
work.
Kengo Hanazawa. Yeah.
Yes, and that one's interesting. It's like ninjas are like the secret agents of the world, and they're doing all these different things. So it's kind of interesting. And
I'm
his
not
art
too
style is very
surprised.
unique too. So
Yeah, not too surprised with that one because I imagine Ed Chavez being a fan of Kengo Hanazawa. If I recall, he does like I Am a Hero, and I guess this
yeah, and
one
that
is
one just
good
finished
as
up from
well.
Dark Horse, and that was 11 omnibuses. But
Oh, I
that
need to
one
finish
was an
that.
interesting one on the zombie genre and stuff like that, and
That
even on
project,
I need to
Guns
finish
in
it.
Japan for that matter.
It's so good from what I've read.
good personal project sounds like.
Once the library opens,
Okay, are we done with the any licenses that stuck out to you, or anything company wise?
well, I know that Funimation announced various delays, but then uh, James brought to my attention that Higurashi was actually licensed by them, the new one. What
Go
else?
back to Igarashi.
Yeah, we did mention that.
Tokyo Pop licensed more BL manga.
Go where the
Uh,
market is.
Well,
well,
at least we're getting an area for them, so we'll get what we can.
yeah, it's just like why how it's like I'm amazed they're still alive. And then oh yeah, and then the Slayers novels got licensed too. And I'm just like, wow, after all this time, Slayers is coming out.
Well, they've been picking up quite a bit of those old Tokyo Pop ones, like Full Metal Panic and stuff like that. And then
Yeah.
now we have that. And the great thing about those announcements is they put them right onto the J Novel platform to read the first script and stuff like that. That's how they do it. And so I read the first part of Slayers and that. So that was great to see because
see,
obviously they're all new translations.
getting familiar with other companies and formats, and especially digital ones. J
And
novel, I didn't really know the name until all of this, so I have to look them up a little bit more.
so
By my
that
own.
was Sam Pernansky. And he was
Mhm.
an interesting fella because I guess he went to Japan, got his PhD in the science field and stuff like that. But on the side, he was doing translation stuff like that for Crunchyroll and stuff like that. Then remember, he started that crowdfunding platform with these Japanese companies that tried to bring out Creamy Mommy, Blackjack, and a few other things. And that only went so far, unfortunately. And now he's doing J Novel Club, which he said he's doing with his own money. And it's been successful so far because he's actually putting out physical product as well as the digital product that they started out from. But they're still doing that where you subscribe to them, you get the first few chapters, and then it's edited further and then given an ebook presentation, stuff like that, sold as that, and then those chapters that were originally there disappear after a certain amount of time. And then if it's popular enough, you get a physical volume. But certain ones they know will sell. So Slayers we know is going to get a physical hardcover omnibus volume of 3 volumes, just like Full Metal Panic.
Well, is any other licenses or something, or
Well,
mind if I give you another thought?
well, Aniplex is going to put out an expensive ass Persona 5 Blu-ray box set.
I guess
Oh,
everyone was
oh.
on that, but look at what you do get. You do get, I think it was 26 or 24 episodes, and then you have the 2 specials and stuff like that, plus it's dubbed. So if you look at it from the old mindset, you could say, okay, I can see where they're coming from, but everyone else is like, why isn't it $60 US or something like that? So,
Well, no, not even that. Well, because like what? It's like $300, and you're not
yeah,
throwing
it
in
is.
like you're just giving me some fucking postcards with it. Like, come on, Aniplex.
Just,
Hey, that was a thing in the past. That was a
just
thing in the past.
imagine if they had a
Especially
soundtrack
when
in
you're
there,
down.
Kevin, it would probably be $500.
No, you would have needed to add like other shit, like the Morgana plush that came with the original P5 collector's edition. So like, if I can get like all the stuff for like an extra $80 for the video game version, you couldn't even throw in like a Joker mask or like whatever. Like, come on, man. Like, oh,
I guess
Aniplex.
for
Well,
some people,
I
at
know
least
why it's
they dubbed
expensive.
it because they couldn't even bother to dub Persona 4 Golden.
Well, wait, the Persona 4 Golden anime?
Correct. Yeah, that's the
Well, that
only one that wasn't dubbed.
well,
Yeah,
that
they never
sucks.
dubbed that. So it was done in 2 parts
Yeah, I
by
remember
them,
that.
subtitle only.
Well, the Golden anime sucks, to be honest. I watched that.
No, it makes sense. Yeah, if you think about it that way. So.
It's just
okay.
pure fan service for the fans.
But it's kind of funny they made the announcement, and then you're like, oh yeah, we forgot about Persona 5 for a while. Because you're so thinking about like Persona 5 Royale and stuff like that.
Yeah, and
Okay.
that still came with some decent stuff too.
Yeah, that was with the
Not like,
mask you were talking about, the Joker.
yeah, not just fucking postcards. Like, ugh.
All right. Okay. So, well, we got a little bit more time left. Okay. The other thing that, well, when you caught my attention, Kevin, when you tried to get my attention, it was towards the end of Saturday when you showed me, check out the concerts, with Anime Expo Light. They
Mhm.
were near the end of that, and they were having their final concerts and all that stuff. And you alerted me that Yoko Takahashi was about to sing.
Yes.
Well, tell me, like, it looked like the concerts were all stuff pre-taped. We went on about this last week about our impressions of AX Lite. A lot of stuff looked not necessarily live; it looked all pre-taped. But
So,
watching the performance was kind of interesting to watch.
But
And
was it
yeah,
old AX performances then?
no, from the looks of it, it was so my friend calls these pre-recorded lives. So, yes, it was recorded, but from the looks of it, it was recorded specifically for AX Lite, which is I'm okay with that.
I was under the circumstances, like with this whole thing, with all these lockdown conventions, so to speak. You take what you can get, but things are done specifically for the situation given. For my part, it was interesting to watch all that, just to watch the Takahashi segment. I know there was other artists who, frankly, I'll be honest, I am not familiar with at this point, but I'll try and look up a little more in the future. Aside from Kotoko,
Oh,
who did the concert.
man, I have to thank my friend for bringing the concert to my attention because I would have missed seeing Kotoko and Elisa perform.
Mm-hmm.
What a
Mm-hmm.
1-2 punch. Oh man, that was great. Like,
So, and it sounded like the concerts were really. Am I short of saying a highlight for these online cons?
highlight for me.
Yeah, they
Oh well,
definitely had both cons had some great musical guests and stuff like that, which we
well,
hadn't seen before, right? But they definitely have the power to bring them over, right? And get them.
yes, they do. Certainly, AX has the history. Funimation has the sheer power. And in Kevin's case, remember when we were talking IFF last year, Kevin came for the IFF concerts, and I don't think he saw anything else. Whereas me, you, James, we saw a lot of the other stuff that happened at IFF.
Yeah, the panels.
Sure Wars.
I
So
went one day in the end.
oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah, I went like the last day.
But we were taught. But I know you. I know the concerts were a thing for you, and one of the powers of IFF, I suppose. So concerts are a bit of a thing, and it was the last thing that officially for Anime Expo Light, and then they had their closing ceremonies right after, from what I could understand.
Mm-hmm.
But well, overall, just worthwhile things to have seen overall. Like all three of them, I think I found them all interesting under the circumstances,
I didn't pay too much attention to the Funimation con, to be honest.
and that's your prerogative.
And
I mean,
some
there's
things
nothing wrong
did
with it.
overlap too, right? Like with
Yeah,
Aniplex
there's
and
a lot of
Funimation. I know.
overlap. It was tough to choose from. Well, obviously, I've already said none of it was my choice. My choice was none of them. I ended up watching and playing other stuff. But as the summer goes, we still have a few more of these to go, right?
Yeah.
And it was a worthwhile weekend. I mean, it was a worthwhile weekend because that should have been Anime Expo weekend. And I guess as a thank you, as a shout out to the hardcore fandom, and it's there. You know, you had that fandom had choice, and you know, choice is good sometimes. Choice is good a lot of the time. And I think when you think about it, Funimation really wasn't. You know, they just want to give an option for fans, and Anime Expo wanted to keep its presence. So I'd like to think fans won on that.
And
At
Aniplex
least,
was an interesting method as well, as we saw that one. If you've watched like the extras on Blu-rays or DVDs, it was kind of like that for like the talk show format with some of the panels promoting some of their
Yeah.
shows. And then of course they had their concerts as well and stuff like that from their artists. And that's still going to be on for a week after, so it might be down by the time we put this up. But I watched some panels from there and it was interesting. The one I watched that I remember offhand was Millionaire Detective Bounce Unlimited, which only got 2 episodes on Noitamina before they had to delay because of COVID, and it's going to come back at the end of the month. And it was
yeah.
interesting them discussing things that you would never even think about.
Oh, I actually had that running in the background because that one was airing late at night, right? That little talk segment.
Yeah, that
Yes.
was late at night. And the other thing was they were talking with the band that did the opening because supposedly they're big. It's the Stones. It's not
Yes.
spelled that way, but that's how they say it, which is kind of weird.
Yes, I remember. I did watch a segment of that, and I was like, "Huh, okay, okay."
And like the one main character, like they have the straight guy that came from England, stuff like that, is super spy and can use all the money in the world. And then the other guy's like, you shouldn't be using money. And he's like this cop and stuff like that and rough and tumble. But the one guy that plays the straight up guy, it was so funny where he was saying that he was actually recording alone for the first couple of episodes. And this was before COVID. And
Mhm.
then one of the stories was you see these dancing shows. It's kind of like the Bond opening where you see the show, the main character dancing and doing all these moves. Well, I guess he had experience obviously in the entertainment industry outside of anime and stuff like that. So this was more new to him. But they said the director's like, okay, show us some dance moves so we like can animate that or put that somehow in the opening. And he just randomly did some stuff that made it into the opening,
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay.
which is kind of interesting.
All right. Well, as I said, some of this might still be up, so we'll put links, and we'll see if anybody clicks on them, whether or not they're still up.
The interesting thing too is they were definitely going for the international audience because they said their greetings in Japanese, English, and in Chinese and stuff like that. And they
It
had
was on
certain things.
on platforms in China.
Yep. And they did some, like that one too. They did some line readings and stuff like that. And they were trying to give line readings in Chinese and English of the same line. It was kind of interesting them trying to do that. And you could tell the one guy's like, yeah, I was practicing like late at night for hours on end in my bathtub. And you're just laughing about that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, so with that, we I guess we should, for now, leave behind Funimation Con, AX Lite, and Aniplex online. Let's look ahead for a couple minutes, because on the horizon now are 2 Canadian ones. Momiji's online experience, the Anime North online show, begins 2 weeks from tonight. And then there's Otakuthon, which this one could be a little bit more interesting. Otakuthon's really more than a month away, but that caught my attention for, well, it'll be the first online convention that I know of that will actually be asking for money for registrations. That's the one that has my attention. So, which one do we want to sink into for a second? I guess Otakuthon's a little bit more to sink into for a minute. James?
Well, it was interesting because I saw, and I think other people noticed it too, like they're charging an admission price of $15 US or $20 Canadian per account. And that basically they're on an online platform, VFairs. And so it kind of reminds you about this weekend, right? Where some of them obviously were and most of them have either done YouTube or Twitch or Funimation. They were on their own virtual platform. Well, it takes money to make those platforms. Sony may have the money, but volunteer-driven organization like Otakuthon, if they're going to go that route with the platform, I can kind of understand why they want some money and stuff like that. And I'm not sure how that will go. And they have the usual things. It's like, on the virtual platform, you can go through the virtual exhibition hall and you get mailed a souvenir badge and postcard only in Canada and US. And then you can access their base t-shirt and any merchandise. And the other thing is that I guess there's going to be 30 days after the event, you can have access to their non-live content, they're saying.
Okay. The whole idea of paying for something after a run of non-paid conventions, it's first blush says it's not going to go over well, but who knows? And when you put in these terms, okay, you can at least give it pause for thought.
I guess the thing too, though, Mike, is you think about where the price of convention tickets are now, and they're quite higher than what they used to be. That maybe if you're at $15 US or $20 Canadian, people are more likely to pay that than they are to pay like if it was higher. I think like they probably would have been able.
I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah,
I'm still in my house,
but you're paying $20.
And yes, I can participate in their scavenger hunt and maybe earn points that can go towards winning prizes. And
but if they get the Japanese artist you've always been wanting to see all year,
heyo.
Yeah, if they're gonna have concerts, I understand, and I also understand that it costs money to run these things. Don't get me wrong, but the value proposition is it's got to be there for me at least. I can only speak for myself because I don't want no fucking postcard and physical badge when I'm not going to even, be
like I said,
there in Montreal.
Sometimes these have been known to be things.
And it's like weird things too, like you hear things like join online video game channels to play with your friends from our platform's gaming wall and things like that. So it's this weird thing, and I haven't heard of this platform for VFair, so who knows how that goes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the thought of playing with people at a virtual con is so appealing because I don't
Scavenger
do that on Steam.
Scavenger hunts, game shows, leaderboards.
Leaderboard for what?
The leaderboards say by exploring the convention, you will be awarded points and rise in the leaderboard. Those with the highest scores at the conclusion of the event will be eligible for prizes offered by our partners.
That's the scavenger hunt, okay.
That's the leaderboard, and the scavenger hunt is just saying keep your eye out for the halls and corridors. Find hidden items throughout the virtual convention for your chance to win a prize for finding them.
It really depends on how interactive they're going to make this thing.
They talk about game shows.
They'll have to justify the cost, I guess.
Like that, I can see that being okay.
And there is a help desk supposedly for technical difficulties too, since it's on a fully functional platform too.
Well, that is nice.
you know what's funny? So for my job, we have this annual conference week every year, and because of COVID, we had to move to a virtual conference. And VFair was one of the platforms we were considering, but we didn't because it was just too expensive.
Oh, well now. So another wrinkle to the whole, well, what Otakuthon is trying to do.
All these digital platforms that are doing virtual anything are charging an arm and a leg for the most basic of anything. So ticket prices are understandable at what they are. Yeah, it sucks, but that's just the way it is.
Dang. Okay, well, I think we'll have more time to talk about Otakuthon eventually because that's more than a month away. That's in mid August.
I guess if we wanted to think about it, Mike, and I only saw it on Funimation's Con, but when they were doing autographs and stuff like that, all the autographs were like these voice messages and video messages and stuff like that, and they were charging about $50 to get those from English voice actors, which was intriguing.
Yeah, that you can record and put on your voicemail or whatever, right?
Yeah, and I guess merch that they signed.
So a digital shout out, a digital autograph of sorts.
And a lot of other smaller cons or other virtual cons, I don't think would have access to that. So
yeah, well, you have to, as I said, you have to be a little creative in these times. Okay, well, as I said, Otakuthon is more than a month away. Do we want to say anything about Momiji's online experience before it happens in 2 weeks?
Well, all I expect from it are decent panels. So it'll be more akin to Anime Lockdown is what I'm hoping it'll be, because for me, Anime North has always had some okay panels and some good ones. So, and this is something that we didn't really get with the corporate run cons, or even just like the fact that West Coast cons in general don't really do panels the way that we do out east. So I expect AN to be very panel focused, which is fine by me because I like going to panels, and we didn't really get those kinds of panels at the cons that happened last week. Because that's just not a thing that they do at West. They don't really do fan run panels at West Coast conventions. So that's one thing that I look forward to.
Yeah, it'll be basically Anime North playing to its known strengths.
I think it was interesting. They were asking for questions, I believe, through Twitter and stuff like that, because one of the panels is actually going to have Donald Simmons, and it's like Ask Anime North because he was one of the convention founders and stuff like that. So that'll be interesting to learn more about the history of the con, because we haven't had too much of that happen over the years and stuff like that with those type of panels. You know what I mean? You've had how do you run a convention and stuff like that, but not a look back. You know what I feel like?
For us, who've kept up with the Toronto scene all these years, for me, like 10, 20 years plus in my case, you know a name like Donald Simmons. But I think the casual fan who comes to Anime North would have no clue who Donald Simmons is. So he's a history, and he is very much a historic figure when it comes to Toronto anime fandom as the founder of Anime North. And he's still, and maybe it's a bit of a wonder that he still kicks around the convention these days. So giving him a forum, and God knows this show is into the history sometimes and the behind the scenes stuff. I think fans would should find some fascination in learning about the history of something like that.
So yeah, all the questions must have been submitted because they said by June 30th, and they were sending them to an email address, and then so it'll be screened questions. But I'm sure there will be some interesting ones. That'd be intriguing.
Okay, we'll see about that.
No, at least from my end. Of course, mileage varies, and
you never know, right?
So you'd be able to ask Donald anything.
Maybe that's
in theory, air quotes anything. Obviously, they screen it, but yeah.
The deadline is passed, but who knows?
I wish I knew.
Mileage varies.
because I do have questions.
Anyway, I guess we're almost done. We wanted to save this episode for talking about the online conventions that have just passed and the ones that are coming up, and what caught our attention at each of those. We'll put up links to what hopefully is VODs or any highlights from the 3 that just passed. And well, I mean, I want to take a look too. So, I mean, I did miss a fair amount of all of that. So it'll be a look for me, something to look at while I'm resting myself after playing Yakuza or watching other stuff. And I know there's been other headlines over the last week that might be worth mentioning. I mean, we did mention Christopher Butcher. We did mention Ken Akamatsu at the end of episode 20, and I want to take a longer look at that. Yes, I did look at the Evo headline. So I'm not sure I want to... Well, maybe we'll at least acknowledge that, because, damn, that's about all I could say about that. And there are other stories I know that have happened in the last week that I know we can regard in episode 21. So do we have any final thoughts before we end off the digest?
I have a couple. I forgot to mention this earlier, but Silent Mobius got licensed again, the manga. Digital only, though.
Who has it this time? Sorry.
Who? Some random small company. What were they called? Manga Planet.
Okay.
So, we'll, assuming that they'll publish all of it, we'll finally get all of it right to left, because, Viz released it flipped, and Udon, it sold poorly for Udon, so they canceled it. So maybe third time's the charm.
Now that's digital only, Kevin. Can it really be flipped and not flipped?
Hey, man.
You'll never know.
Never know.
That's always a discussion. Anything else?
And so when Yoko Takahashi was performing, I was like, man, I hope that Pumpkin Scissors song is going to be sung. And of course it didn't. She sung nothing but Evangelion music.
I have to say this.
She, Fly Me to the Moon, yeah, of course. And then Tamashii no Refrain, which I forgot about, but I was like, oh, that's nice. And then I was like, oh, maybe she'll sing other stuff. And then nope, it's just sung more Evangelion image songs. I was like, god damn it, man. Like, give me the Shauna, give me your Shauna opening, or give me your Shauna ending song, or give me the Pumpkin Scissors song. But of course it didn't happen.
That's what I would want, but I guess the people want something else, Kevin.
They want Evangelion, which they were gonna get anyway. But
they're gonna get, and she couldn't do a longer set, I suppose. It was interesting because since Eva found its way onto Netflix, the record company, I think it's King Records, I believe, they've pushed her out there again. I think one promo I always said, well, hoping to introduce her music now to a new generation, right? I mean, I get it. Eva is one of those benchmarks, but
it's the only way. It's the only reason why Yoko Takahashi is still relevant to anime fans.
Hey, it's nothing. Yes, but sometimes it's not. There's nothing wrong with hanging your coat, so to speak, on one thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big thing to hang your coat on, right?
Yeah. Sorry.
Like if you're remembered for something, for being associated with such a landmark series, I'd say there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with a crowning achievement.
Got to pay the bills.
Yes. Anyone else? James, Mo, or you finish your thought, Kevin?
Oh, I'll just say also, Kotoko only sung old stuff, which was fine by me. She sung Resublimity from Kanazuki no Miko, which was surprising. I guess I didn't realize how popular that song was. Also, the Please Teacher opening, which is how I got into Kotoko, and Please Teacher is one of my favorite series.
Which
even with that TV premise, but yes.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those series, like back in the day, that was a noteworthy series. The fans, the more recent fans, would probably not have a grasp of that or would understand that. There's nothing wrong with looking at the history of fandom in that sense, in the history of what was popular back then. Will it be popular? Because like we mentioned in the past, will certain series that are popular today, will My Hero Academia hold up 20 years from now? Right? I think one of you guys said that last time.
If that probably will.
Well, for instance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway,
at least it was amazing.
Mm.
No euphoric
James?
field though.
James, Mo, do you have a final thought before we finish off?
I'll keep mine short. Watch Food Wars on Netflix. It's pretty cool.
Oh, well.
Oh, really? You got into Food Wars?
Food Wars is on Netflix. That appeared there. I know and what's the other thing you mentioned? You mentioned another title on Netflix that seems to be getting a bit of attention.
Japan Sinks 2020.
Yeah, that seems to.
I've been hearing about that.
I've heard about that one. Yes, and it's actually on my recommended list whenever I log into Netflix right now. So those are two titles maybe worth watching if you have your Netflix subscription. James, you have a final thought?
Not too much a final thought, but I was telling you guys, it's like Retro Crush is an interesting way, at least in North America, to watch some retro anime and stuff like that. And they just put up the old Blackjack OVA from the 90s, which is more grittier and 12 episode subtitles. So that's an interesting one if someone wants to watch.
Right, yeah, I guess we should have a bit more of a discussion about other services that show anime that not many would know about.
And that one's interesting because there's no commercials at all, so I'm not sure how exactly they support themselves.
Sometimes life surprises you. I'll look into it a little more, I'm sure.
Wow, Hakuge, The Legend of Moby Dick? Man, never thought of that.
Yeah, it's a lot of classic anime, so they're getting it from Discotek and from all those other Japanese ones, so it's an interesting eclectic mix, as we would say.
Yeah, well, I mean, just on a whim, I was driving once, and then my iPhone accidentally connected into the stereo speakers and onto my Bluetooth in the car, and it suddenly started playing the overture from Some Days Dreamers. So it had me thinking about that for a second. And
I remember that show.
Which is kind of creepy about, which is, well, let's not talk about the issues with my phone for now. But it had me thinking, and looking it up, I didn't know that it's on High Dive now because Sentai got it. And
yeah, they got it a long time ago. That was one of their early rescues. They got that, and they got the summer, the sequel series that wasn't exactly related, but it was kind of continuation with new characters. I forget, it was Summer something.
Which I like. I always known about High Dive in the background, and it's always been there. High Dive's always been there, but
basically High Dive is the new anime network, as they say.
Yeah, well, it's basically it basically shows everything Sentai has, and that's
they're all related.
So it's under the screen. Sometimes there's something you'd want to see on it, so it goes for something. But
I really wonder what's going to happen to them.
Who knows? That's the thing.
It's as if they're being left in the dust.
Well, yeah, they're very much being left in the dust by the others right now.
Weird, like we talked about that, and I'm like, what's happening? We said about what they got this season, which is only 2 shows, and one of them is a continuation, but it's going to be tough for them. But the funny thing is, we talked about how they got that money from Cool Japan, so where does that leave them with that investment and stuff like that? Because maybe that's a drop in the bucket compared to, obviously, the Sony money and the Warner Media money.
Yeah, more than likely. But remember, there's a history with that, with the names associated with that company. I think that should do it. As I said, just something to give a roundup of what we saw during the last week. That's all we got for this recording. Thanks for listening.